Not a real veteran. Stop pretending. It's honestly disgusting. Karen's voice rang out like a slap across the face in the middle of the HOA meeting, every head in the room snapping toward her as if pulled by gravity. The community center's fluorescent lights buzzed above us, but it was nothing compared to the silence that fell after her accusation. Update 4. The order was approved and would be enforced immediately. Karen could no longer contact me, approach my property, or interfere with my professional or personal life in any capacity. A separate notice from the DA's office informed her that she was now under formal investigation for criminal harassment and obstruction. She had crossed the line so many times it no longer existed. But the final blow wasn't delivered by me, the military, or even the legal system. It came from her own peers, the community she had tried to manipulate and control. One of her former allies posted a heartfelt message thanking me for my service and apologizing for not speaking up sooner. Others followed suit. The very people Karen had counted on to back her up were now standing with me, not because I asked them to, but because they chose to. Karen, once the self-proclaimed queen of the cul-de-sac, had been dethroned. Not by revenge. Not by aggression. But by truth, accountability, and the one thing she never expected, quiet, patient resilience backed by ironclad authority. And as I stood on my porch once again, watching a new HOA banner being raised, a banner that honored veterans and community service, I couldn't help but think that maybe, just maybe, the fight had been worth every silent step. The next HOA meeting was unlike any that had come before. There was no bickering, no self-righteous posturing, and no Karen with her binder full of delusion sitting at the head of the table. Instead, the room felt alive with quiet anticipation, a sense of collective relief, and cautious optimism. Chairs were filled. Neighbors who hadn't attended meetings in years were suddenly present, some out of curiosity, others simply to make sure the madness had truly come to an end. I took my seat near the back, not out of habit, but out of choice. I didn't need a front row view. I already knew how this story ended. The new interim president, a retired firefighter named Bill, opened the meeting with a short, no-nonsense statement. "Let's keep this short and civil," he said. "We've got some cleaning up to do." There were some chuckles, a few nods, and not a single objection. The first order of business was to officially ratify the vote that removed Karen from the board. The motion passed without a single dissent. Then came a motion to revise the bylaws to include strict provisions against personal harassment, misuse of HOA authority, and targeting of service members or protected personnel. That one passed too. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about making sure nobody like Karen ever weaponized their position again. When the floor opened for community discussion, I wasn't planning to speak, but a few neighbors insisted. One woman stood and said, "I think we owe Mr. James a proper thank you, not just for his service to the country, but for putting up with more than anyone ever should have to from one person." There was a short wave of applause. Then another neighbor stood and added, "She tried to tear this place apart," and he held the line, quietly, professionally, with more dignity than I could have mustered. It wasn't grandstanding. It was genuine. And even though I hadn't asked for it, the support meant something. After everything, the respect of your neighbors carried more weight than any regulation or court ruling. I stood up, slowly walked to the front, and faced the crowd, not to lecture, not to gloat, just to close the chapter. I spoke briefly, thanking them for their support, for standing up when it counted, and for understanding that serving your country doesn't end when you step off base. It continues in your communities, in how you treat people, and in how you respond when someone abuses power. I didn't mention Karen's name. I didn't need to. Her absence said more than I ever could. As the meeting closed, something unexpected happened. Bill pulled out a small certificate from behind the podium. It was a neighborhood commendation, an informal thing, but signed by every current board member. It read, "For upholding integrity and service under fire, both foreign and domestic." The crowd stood, applauded, and in that moment, the HOA stopped feeling like a battlefield. It felt like home again. The following weekend, something even more surprising unfolded. A small group of neighbors organized a barbecue at the park near the clubhouse. They invited everyone, made it potluck style, and asked if I'd mind giving a brief speech about my service. I hesitated at first. I'd never liked talking about deployments, rank, or medals, but they weren't asking for that. They just wanted to understand. To connect. So, I agreed. That Saturday, the park buzzed with laughter, the smell of grilled food, and kids chasing each other through the grass. Folding chairs were lined up near the gazebo, and someone had strung up a banner that read, "Community stronger than chaos." A few veterans wore caps. Others came up just to shake my hand. Even people who had once backed Karen were now cautiously warm, many of them offering quiet apologies or simple nods of respect. I didn't hold grudges. Not against them. I knew how fear and manipulation work. Karen had thrived off it. But fear only holds power until someone calmly walks into the storm, and keeps standing. When I stepped up to speak, I kept it short. I told them about service, not just mine, but the kind they'd all shown by choosing decency when it mattered. I reminded them that authority without accountability is dangerous, whether in uniform or behind a clipboard. And I thanked them for proving that communities can heal if people are willing to face hard truths together. But the real surprise came at the end of the event. A small group of children, led by a teacher from the local school, had prepared a flag ceremony. They raised the American flag while a high school band played a modest rendition of the national anthem. And beneath the flag, they unveiled a small bronze plaque placed at the base of the pole. It read, "In honor of those who serve, especially those who serve quietly among us." My throat tightened. I wasn't someone who got emotional in public. But in that moment, surrounded by neighbors who had gone from indifferent to united, I felt something powerful. A kind of peace that not even the highest clearance or the most strategic military operation could ever bring. Karen didn't show her face again after the order was served. Her house went up for sale 2 weeks later. Rumor was, she moved in with her sister in another state. No dramatic exit. No apology. Just silence, like a storm that finally ran out of wind. The new residents who moved into her place were a young couple with a toddler and a golden retriever. They put out lawn chairs, waved at passers-by, and strung fairy lights around the porch. One day, the husband walked over and introduced himself. "We heard a little about the old HOA drama," he said sheepishly. I just smiled and replied, "Don't worry. It's been resolved." Months passed, and life returned to normal. The flag still flew high outside my home. My dog still made his morning rounds. And I kept my role at Base Bravo, more committed than ever, not just to national security, but to community strength. What started as an insult, a petty accusation, became something greater, a reminder that honor doesn't need to scream. It just needs to stand firm. I never wanted a fight. I wanted respect, peace, and a quiet life, like anyone else. But when the battle came to my doorstep, I handled it the same way I handled everything else in life, with patience, discipline, and unwavering focus. And in the end, the one who yelled the loudest was forgotten the fastest. Because in this neighborhood, truth didn't just survive. It saluted.